Welcome into the Show Before the Show podcast. I am Sam Dykstra. I am not Tyler Mon with a cold. Anybody who's a normal listener to the show might recognize that Tyler normally introduces the show each week. Tyler is off on vacation in Italy. We tried to get him to call in with an Italian accent. He found that offensive. I don't blame him. And I tried to come up with a Mickey Mouse style story to make up about Tyler, Ben, but I decided I'm above that.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
You?
I have decided personally that I, Sam Dykstra, am above lying about my friends. So we will have Tyler on the show next week. For now, it is myself and Ben Hill, who we've already heard it briefly there, in the same room in New York City. Ben, you are back from the road. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Been back for a few days now. We're recording this on Thursday. I got back on Sunday afternoon. Pretty much that whole week after getting back from the road seems like it's dedicated to recovering from the road and processing the road. Yeah, I don't have to all get into it, but in my single days, I was very precious about just needing a night before I did anything social, before I did anything to just like pour some drinks, methodically unpack, and just kind of process everything. Because the stuff on the road, new locations every day, you're just getting through it. And then you get home and you're like, oh, wow, that was funny, or that was weird, or that didn't work out, or that did work out. It's really important mentally. Took the day off yesterday. Took the Q train to Brighton Beach, sat on the beach for a while, and now I feel like I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting you at a good time then. A day to recollect yourself, gather some thoughts on the trip as a whole. We got you last week on the show from a hotel room outside Memphis, in Memphis. You were in the middle of your trip anyway.
Yeah, I was right in Memphis, a hotel right across the street from the ballpark. And when I was in the hotel room that night, I was like, oh yeah. I told Sam and Tyler I'd do a road trip recap, and it was like midnight. I was exhausted. I'd had some health issues on the road last week in the early part of the trip, and I was kind of teetering. But I look back on that, and that time in Memphis was great. I had a really good night in Memphis, and I did the chicken dance, which I mentioned. I mentioned it in my late night hotel room report, that aired last week. But we actually had a coworker who happened to be at that game, I guess, just as a fan. So word got back to the office about the chicken dance, and Sam found it and cut the video before I even went through and found my own video of it. And the one you found is from the game footage. It's a really good video, and I feel like everywhere I've been walking around in the office since I got back, people are like, Ben, whoa, the chicken dance. And it's always hard for me. I need like some mental separation when I do things like that because I don't really like watching myself. But part of this road trip decompressing, I did that, and I was like, that was pretty good. That was fun. I pretty much nailed it. So it's just that old feeling of like I thought I retired from this kind of stuff, but you never truly retire from this kind of thing. I'm back at it. So I've got a couple more trips this season. Next one is in North Carolina at the end of the month, and I think I'm going to prioritize that a little bit, depending on the team and their situation of not necessarily chicken dancing, but getting back out there, maybe tossing some first pitches, participating in between inning contests, because it's all content, isn't it? And that's what we're all about here. Content.
Yeah, well, shout out to Andrew Simon for pointing that out to the office, that he was in Memphis and saw you do this. I know you had mentioned it on the podcast, but that was the kick that I needed to track down the footage. And also, just on the 20 to 80 scale, I mean, that was at least 70 grade chicken dancing. I got to say, you really gave it 110% effort. You were going up against two other people who were in it. They were giving it something, but it was a seasoned pro. Definitely a professional performance by you, and I encourage you to do more of that. And also, you did throw out a first pitch. I think it was in Rome.
In Rome, yeah.
And you were on the mound throwing it 60 feet 6 inches. It didn't bounce.
Yeah,
you made it. Like, for all these people who have such anxiety about first pitches, like, can I make it the full way? I'm only going to go halfway or like to the foot of the pitcher's bump. You were right up there and threw it the whole way. So that was a good performance by you.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt I got out there and I showed the world that I still got it, baby. Yeah, I hadn't done a first pitch in a while. I thought I'd retired from that. I did go through some periods where I was bouncing them pretty regular, and it was driving me crazy because when you go up to the mound and you say, okay, just don't bounce it seems like the simplest thing in the world.
Well, then the only thing you're thinking about is bouncing.
Yeah.
Not throwing it through the catcher.
Yeah. And so I don't really work on, velocity or anything. I'm just like, just throw a nice, easy strike. And that one happened this time. My catcher, Julius, dropped the ball, but that's on That's on the Penguin, not me.
That's on the Penguin.
Yeah.
We're going to make that into a bumper sticker. Also, I want you to do one in a AAA park just so we can get StatCast data on that. Or if there's any team that has TrackMan data going and can send me whatever you have on Ben's pitches, please do that very quickly.
Oh yeah, I want some analysis.
Yeah,
Let's go.
we'll break down your full pitches, put it into a Stuff Plus model, the whole nine. But because of where you were last week, you were in the middle of the trip. You were in Memphis, like you said. You still had two more stops after that. You went to Arkansas in Little Rock to see the Travelers. What stood out most from that visit?
Yeah, I mean, I woke up in Memphis, and one final note on Memphis. Per usual, I did not have much to time to explore, but AutoZone Park and the hotel I was staying at across the street, they are both real close to Charlie Burgos Rendezvous, the iconic, barbecue, rib, Southern cooking restaurant that supplies the seasoning for the Memphis Redbirds' famous barbecue nachos. But there's a little street right past the ballpark, Rendezvous Alley, and this restaurant is just in a literal alley. And it's an old building. It was leaking some when I walked in the front entrance. And I'm not saying that as like a diss, but just like it's an old space. But you go down there, go down some stairs. It was lunchtime. I just got a half rack of ribs, but real good with that dry rub barbecue, spicy seasoning, just all sorts of memorabilia on the walls, sports related, local to Memphis history and culture, military stuff. But just that place is dripping with character. So if you go to Memphis, it's an easy stop, especially if you're seeing a ball game. Go to Rendezvous, Charlie Burgos Rendezvous. But you're right. The next stop was Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. So got up there. I stay at Wyndham Hotels on these trips. They're a sponsor. Not every time, but whenever it makes sense in terms of the location to the ballpark. Stayed at the Riverfront Hotel, and it was right across the street from the ballpark. So that was really nice to check in, walk across the street, get there. The river in question is the Arkansas River. And I believe that Dickey-Stephens Park, the home of the Travelers, is in North Little Rock. And then the river, Arkansas River, separates North Little Rock from Little Rock proper. Kind of like in Sacramento. That ballpark is technically in West Sacramento, and the bridge, there's a bridge right beyond the ballpark that separates it from Sacramento proper. Also, this ballpark, for reasons I don't understand, is at the intersection of Broadway and Broadway. I believe it's West Broadway and North Broadway. Not exactly sure how that worked out, but it sounds good. Welcome to baseball.
North Broadway and Broadway.
Yeah, welcome to baseball on Broadway and Broadway, Dickey-Stephens Park. I hadn't been there since 2012, which was also the case in Memphis and also the case in my final stop in Northwest Arkansas. So a lot to take in there. The Travelers have been a franchise since 1901. We've talked in the past, and I think this is true, but I think it was the first professional team to use a state as its geographical designation or signifier. They've never been, or it's been many, many years since they've been Little Rock anything. They've been the Arkansas Travelers for decades. So that's pretty rare, especially when they started to do that. I forget exactly what year they started using Arkansas, but it's Little Rock, Arkansas. I guess technically North Little Rock. That ballpark, Dickey-Stephens, opened 2006, I want to say. Better part of 20 years ago. I like that ballpark. Big brick exterior. You walk under this like really impressive archway to go into it. There's a wooden pagoda right when you walk in, kind of like an information desk, fan services sort of thing. Plenty of room to move, 360-degree concourse. Yeah, opened in 2007. Thank you, Sam, my fact checker. Opened in 2007, not 2006. Plenty of room to move. You've got views of the Junction Bridge, again, spanning the Arkansas River. So that's Wichita Wind Surge are right by the Arkansas River. Tulsa Drillers are near the Arkansas River. There's a lot of minor league baseball by the Arkansas River. And Wichita and now Tulsa both have alternate identities related to idiosyncratic Arkansas River races. The Turbo Tubs in Wichita commemorating tub racing, and the River Racers. Is it River Racers? I wrote it down. In Tulsa. Anyway. So I'm thinking the Travs, they need some sort of Arkansas River identity to make it 3 in the Texas League. It is the
Raft racer.
Raft racers. I knew it. Thank you. Again, I can't be trusted to do a segment without Sam like fact checking everything. Um, so it was really good to be back there. One thing that really stands out, and we don't see this very much in today's baseball atmosphere, but a live organist. The live organist there on this evening was working just his second game for the team. His name was Tim Allen. But I talked to him.
Not the Tim Allen.
Not Tim Allen like Tool Time, Tim Taylor, Tim Allen. Not the Tim Allen, a different Tim Allen. He is a native of England and moved to the U.S. decades ago, initially like the St. Louis area. Kind of became a baseball fan, but he's a classically trained organist, and he now works full time for a Episcopalian church. And he's played for the Queen. He's played for big time events in very formal organ settings. And he said the first time he worked at the ballpark was some of the most nervous he'd ever been, doing that. So this is his second night at the ballpark. It's not actually an organ, it's a keyboard, but he's stationed right, whether it's Tim Allen or one of their other organists, he's stationed right behind the concourse, behind home plate. You can watch him in action. And I always just think that adds, so much to the ballpark, having a live organist. The Hook Slide Beer Garden is still there down the first base side. That is a reference to the team's old home of Ray Winderfield, where there was a guy who was just nicknamed Hook Slide, and he'd get a few in him on, I guess, most games, and slide on concrete. He would put cardboard boxes down on the concrete and do slides on the concrete. And sometimes into like beer can pyramids. It sounds like a pretty rough and rugged scene, but it was such a part of the ballpark that even to this day, at their quote unquote new ballpark, which has been around since 2007, they have the Hook Slide Corner commemorating Hook Slide. I'm not sure his real name, but
I mean, it's better this way, right? And like the legend of Hook Slide lives on. That's better than it being like Tim Johnson. No offense.
It does. It does. There is a guy there named, I believe, is it Greg Johnson or Greg Johnston? He was the groundskeeper who was entering his 50th season next year. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Just did not see him. I think he was busy fixing a refrigerator or something. But he can often be seen with his dog Dizzy, who's not a bat dog per se, but one of those team celebrity dogs. Dizzy, the groundskeeper dog. Phil Elson just happened to be at this game. Phil Elson, Elson, was the Travelers broadcaster for many years. And I hadn't seen him for a while, and he just happened to be at the game. He DM'd me before, and I ran into him in the team store. So good to see him. If you listen to Travelers baseball through the years, you probably know Phil. I believe he now works for the University of Arkansas. But I'll always remember Phil Elson for a very specific reason, and that's in 2005, the first year ever of MILB.com. It was our first playoffs ever. I was still working, part-time on the night shift in 2005 in that very first season. And I was assigned to write the deciding game of the 2005 Texas League Championships between the Travelers and the Midland Rockhounds. And the Travelers were losing in the bottom of the ninth, game 5, winner take all. Midland got 2 quick outs, and the final hope, Steven Esposito was up. He had a full count. He took ball 4, but the ump, Steve Fritzoni, forgot the count and just said it was ball 3 again. And then he struck out on a 4-2 count to end the entire season in the deciding game of the Texas League Championship. And I remember working on the 8th floor of the Chelsea Market where our offices were there covering this game and hearing Phil Elson just like mad as hell. Like, have a nice career, Fritzoni.
I was going to say the fact that you remember the umpire's name.
Because I always remembered Phil saying that. Yeah. And we've talked in years since that would be a great thing to revisit, not as any sort of gotcha thing to Steve Fritzoni or anything, but just to revisit that.
It sounds like a story from like the 1950s or 60s, right? Like back in an age where it was just the umpire keeping track of balls and strikes. Like that, how did that happen in that situation, in this century, in that situation?
Yeah. So it was such an ugly way for the season to end. And I remember there were some angry people like outside hearing that there were some angry people outside the umpires, dressing room after the game, and ugly situation. I do feel bad for the ump. Like that's just a really bad time to have a mental mistake
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
going. Anyhow, it was good to see Phil Elson. I went on to spend an inning on the air with his predecessor, Stephen Davis. So it was great to do that in the press box. Their food situation is pretty standard for the most part, but they had some specials going. They were playing the Wichita Wind Surge, and so they had a KC barbecue chicken sandwich. It was a salute to Seattle weekend because they are the Double A affiliate of the Mariners. So they had the Seattle style hot dog. If you ever had one of those, it's got cream cheese on it.
Mm-hmm. I have never had one, though.
Yeah, I actually had one last year when I went to a Mariners game with Eric, the peanut guy, Eric
Oh,
Martins.
yeah, of course.
There was an off day during my road trip, and it was a Monday, so I went with Eric, and we got a Seattle dog, and I got one on a gluten-free bun at a stand outside the ballpark, and I thought it was pretty good. But the Travelers had a Arkansas style dog with bacon, fried onions, and the aforementioned cream cheese, garlic fries they had as well. Then from their dessert stand. Deep fried Oreos, deep fried PB&J. Stephen Preston and his son Henry were the designated eaters, so it was a good time with them. Talked to Rusty Meeks for a while. He's now the team president. His dad Russ, basically ran the team in a more community-owned situation for many years. The Travelers, like a lot of teams in minor league baseball, have been bought by Diamond Baseball Holdings, but the Meeks family name, lives on in Arkansas. Rusty is the team president, and he grew up around the team, with the way because his dad was working for the team and with the team his whole life. So he had some interesting stories about being around the game so long, growing up in the old ballpark at Ray Winder Field. And so it was a lot. It was a lot there in Arkansas. It was a good day. And then the next day before I drove to Northwest Arkansas, I drove to the site of Ray Winder Field, the Travelers' home from 1932 to 2006. And all that remains, it's now a hospital parking lot, and all that remains is the scoreboard.
Oh,
Um,
at least that remains.
but at least that remains. And, I've talked to people about that, and that was a classic ballpark. And I think there's some real disappointment among at least baseball fans in the area that ballpark wasn't preserved to some degree, not found another use for it. It was a real classic facility. And, we see like what happened in Rickwood. Not that every single classic ballpark's going to get that kind of shine, but it's really disappointing to see ballparks that weren't preserved when decades pass and you're like, wow, what if that was still here? And what could we do with that? And it's tough though. It costs money to do any sort of upkeep
Right.
on
Yeah.
these
You,
old
you need
facilities.
somebody like the Friends of Rickwood to keep it up, or like Rickwood had with the Ron Shelton movie Cobb,
Yeah.
if that didn't exist, we're not playing that game a couple weeks back. So,
Yeah, and the fate of Ray Winderfield is far more common than the fate of Rickwood Field,
yeah.
in terms of preservation. But it was good to get out there. Yeah, it's like a hospital parking lot. The Little Rock Zoo is right around there. Drove to a great Vietnamese restaurant called Mike's Cafe. If you're ever in Little Rock, hit up Mike's Cafe, and drove on to Northwest Arkansas. I got there in the afternoon, and they'd had a youth clinic that day, and they had a bobblehead for Caden Wallace, who went to the University of Arkansas. So when I got there was so many fans already there lined up for this bobblehead, and fans were a decent amount were just getting the bobbleheads and leaving, which I think is a kind of common thing, and not just in minor league baseball, but with those sort of giveaways. But a lot of people showed up early to get that Caden Wallace bobblehead. He is, a Little Rock native. Played at University of Arkansas, which is really big throughout the state, and certainly throughout Northwest Arkansas, which is in Springdale. So now he's playing in Arkansas for the Naturals. Northwest Arkansas representing Springdale, Fayetteville, Bentonville, which is best known as the home of Walmart. I'd been to that ballpark, as I said, just once in 2012. There's been some more development around the area since I last went. A community college opened up, some hospitals, some housing, apartment complexes, condominiums. So the growth of that area has been pretty tremendous, and a lot more people now live in that region than when the team first started playing after relocating from Wichita, where they've been the Wranglers. So the Wranglers went to Northwest Arkansas, and then Wichita did eventually obviously get minor league baseball back beginning in 2021 after that franchise. Oh, that was convoluted. That was really convoluted.
We don't need to.
Yeah, we don't need to get into all that.
But speaking of Northwest Arkansas, and you're saying like that region is, I don't want to say up and coming, but like is building out even more so than where it was a few decades back. One new thing about that team is a redesign for this season. Last time we had you here and we were previewing the trip, I asked you about like Rome, and they got a whole rebrand and all that. But Northwest Arkansas, the Naturals got a redesign this season that looks pretty naturalistic, and I really like how it's kind of come across with the reds and the blues and the yellows that they've been.
Yeah.
It's more like pinkish red, I should say. It's not like deep red or anything like that, but it seems to have worked really well. It's catching on. I've seen other people post about it who I don't believe are from the area, but having gotten to see that now, how much does that feel like a fresh coat of paint on that stadium?
Yeah, I think it's been good for them because they've been around, since 2008. Over 15 years, and I think a refresh was good. They had a lot of merch in the team store, seemed to be selling really well. Naturals has always been a bit of an awkward name as a team name, just because what is a natural? How do you embody a natural?
They made a whole movie about what a natural.
Well, that's true. That's true. And there's
but that's not what they're going for.
Well, kind of, sort of, a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, the number one reason for the name is because Arkansas is a natural state, and the Northwest Arkansas Naturals name is playing off the natural beauty of Arkansas. But the Naturals are owned by Rich Foods, big food services conglomerate. They also own the Buffalo Bisons. And the Buffalo Bisons franchise, had a huge uplift and, much greater publicity after their former ballpark. Was it War Memorial Stadium? It was featured in the Naturals. So there's this kind of secondary tie-in with the Northwest Arkansas Naturals, and that the ownership also is making a nod to the Natural and it's the success of that movie and how it affected their franchise in Buffalo. So there is that little that secondary thing. But
I think my takeaway from this, we were just mentioning Cobb and its effect on Rickwood, and now the Natural and its effect on Buffalo. Baseball movies are good for the economy.
They really are.
Just get back to making baseball movies and like see economies sprout across America from coast to coast.
They really are. The international market doesn't like baseball movies, because baseball and China and some of those big box office countries it's not a sport. So, here's what the execs will tell you. No, let's get a more global sport. And I say baseball is global.
Yeah.
We need to be exporting baseball to the places that it hasn't been exported yet, or where it needs a boost. But, those suits, they're running scared.
Come back, suits.
Yeah. Make more baseball movies.
Make more baseball.
You're right, Sam. It is good for the economy. Got to spend an inning or two on the air with Sean Mernon. Great to finally. I guess that was the first time I met him in person, or maybe an industry event. But he's been calling games in a lot of years. He's gotten some major league call-ups, including with the Detroit Tigers. The Naturals are, of course, a Kansas City affiliate. But good to see Sean. I didn't have a designated eater at this game, and after I got off the air with Sean, I checked my Twitter, and there was a guy who just asked me some question about me being at the game, and I was like, "Hey, you here? Want to be designated eater?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure. Meet you at the team store." So, bam, Caleb Curtis.
Look at that.
Yeah, Caleb Curtis. It came together quickly. It was only like the bottom of the fourth inning, but the team's barbecue stand was already closed. The Naturals don't have a lot of like really standout food items in terms of like unique or anything, so I was disappointed to already miss the barbecue. But we got some barbecue nachos, a sausage with onions and peppers. We made do, and it was good stuff, and it was good hanging out with Caleb for a couple innings as well. And as the night, I talked to some longtime fans. I talked to a guy who had been involved with trying to bring the team there from the beginning. Their front office core has been there, starting with the team general manager, Justin Cole, been there for pretty much the entire history of the team. So they've like some front office people have been there for a while. And because it was built in an area that was essentially a big cow pasture, that stadium has a big footprint, parking lot, the stadium itself, lots of room to move, wiffle ball field, inflatables, a concourse train, mostly for kids, going, doing laps around the concourse. This is just a very comfortable ballpark with a lot of room to move. And in those final 2-3 innings, it was still light out, but it was getting dark, and some beautiful baseball sky type photos. So I was just kind of saying like, this trip is winding down, taking in the sky, enjoyed all that a lot. Checked into the Wyndham Wingate near the Northwest Arkansas Regional Airport. And I got a direct flight from the Northwest Arkansas Regional Airport to LaGuardia the next day. And the primary reason you can get a direct flight from the Northwest Arkansas Regional Airport to major cities such as New York is, again, Walmart. have so many people working for them, so much business, and so many people coming to and from Northwest Arkansas on Walmart business that they can actually have direct flights. I would tell their gate agents to understand when there's still room in the overheads, because I had to check my bag, and then I got to my bin and it was totally empty. And I was like, come on, because then I didn't get lunch after I landed because I wanted to get right to baggage claim. Then instead of getting a car, I got on the train because I wanted to get lunch in Jackson Heights, Queens. Everything just took a lot longer, but I got some good tacos and some public transportation on the way home. And whew, here we
And
are.
now here you are.
And now here I am.
Back in New York City.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for our interview segment, our first interview segment this week, because we're having two of them, we're going to throw it back to one of your earlier stops on the tour. We talked about Rome just briefly there, your time with the Emperors, but this is somebody who talks for a living. It's PA announcer Larry Gardner. What can you tell us about Larry?
It was great to meet Larry. He is the Rome Emperors PA announcer, and he's from that greater Rome region. I mentioned him a little bit last week, but when the Braves had a public auditions for their public address announcer job, Larry became a fan favorite when he auditioned for it. Won the fan vote, wasn't chosen for the job, but that notoriety caused the Rome Emperors, a Braves affiliate, to get in touch. And he said, it probably all worked out for the best because this is giving me a lot of experience in a professional baseball realm that I didn't have. So now we'll see where we take it from here. But he's an exuberant guy. You'll hear his voice. You can tell why he's a PA announcer. His name tag just said LG for real, which is not his full Twitter handle, but his full Twitter handle is LG for real though. LG number 4 real THO. So I think people call him LG a lot, and LG for real though. But he's Larry Gardner, and I spoke to him at Advent Health Stadium, the home of the Rome Emperors, last week. And let's hear my conversation with Larry Gardner.
Well, Ben, I appreciate the time of this interview, man. I appreciate you being at Advent Health Stadium. Thank you so much for joining us here as Rome gets ready to prepare for a big series against the Greenville Drive. And I hope this won't be another 10 years before you see in our ballpark again, man.
No, I hope not either, but it's great to be here. And do you mind if we turn the tables and I
Sure,
interview
absolutely.
you a little bit? So first off, LG for real.
That's my Twitter handle.
LG for real. So
LG for real, though, that's my Twitter handle. So they didn't give me a regular name tag here. They gave me my Twitter handle. I'm different from everybody else, and I don't know why. They just made it that way.
So, but you've got quite a reputation on Twitter?
Yes, and it's all from the whole Atlanta Braves announcer search that I participated in a couple of years ago.
Yes, I heard you made some waves with that. What was the story behind that?
So long story short, I was sitting at my desk in insurance one day, and my high school kids teacher sends me a message on Facebook, and they're like, Larry, Braves Fest is tomorrow, and they are doing auditions for the public address announcer for Truist Park. I don't know what you got going on, but you got to get there. And I'm like, okay. Backstory, I have 7 children. So immediately a mass community-wide coordination plan gets to go together and go, I'll take this one here. I'll take this one here. I'll take this one here. We get there, we stand in line about 2.5, almost 3 hours. We get a chance to audition. Thought I did very well. They gave me my tape. I put it on Twitter, and it went viral to the point of where 600,000 people had viewed it within like a day and a half. And so goes through the process. I get the notification from Atlanta. They want me to come in and do another interview. We did. Then they actually told me I want you to come to Truist because we made it to the final 12. And we did a audition on Truist, and everybody saw what it was on. They did like an American Idol type thing. Made it to the final 3, and overwhelmingly won the fan vote. It wasn't even close. It was like 60%, and other people were 20% apiece. So at my point, I was like, okay, fingers crossed. I think we were pretty good in there. And then I ultimately got the story that no, they went in a different direction, which I'm okay with because the guy that did win it, Kevin, I know him. He's a great guy. He earned it. He was in the Braves organization, or has been in the Braves organization for 10 years. So he put his time in. Obviously, he deserves it. But because of that, everybody was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so Justin hit me up the day that they made the announcement. It's like, God, look, I hate it you didn't work for you in Atlanta, but we got a spot open here in Rome if you want to show up and come over. And I'm like, sure.
Yeah, so that experience with the Braves led specifically to you getting this job in Rome.
Yes, it did. It was. Well, they said you needed experience. Well, let's go ahead and start the career and let's get you some experience. So last year was my first year, and it went phenomenally well. I was overwhelmed with the love and the support and just the interaction with fans. I've never, like my press box guys tell me all the time, they've never seen a PA guy have to sign autographs with people. Mm-hmm. Like I had a guy, I've got a jersey that has the voice on it on the back of it. Mm-hmm. And I had a guy tell me he'd give me $300 if I would autograph it and give him off my back to him right now. I was like bumfuzzled about something like that. But it's been so great, man. It's just been a blessing, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to be able to give the life to this stadium every time a game comes in here and just build the relationships with the fans. Because as you said earlier, with the community and things of this nature, man, these people, they're more like a family. You see them all the time. The same ones always show up. And then when the crowds are bigger toward the weekend, the Thursday, Friday, and the Saturday games, you just build so many relationships with these people, and you become like an extended family member, and it makes it all worthwhile, man.
Yeah, so you clearly, I mean, you don't have to talk to you long to hear you've got the voice. You've got the voice for something like this. But you said you hadn't had experience before?
High school. So
high school.
I've been doing high school sports since I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
I was actually announcing the high school girls basketball games before I turned around and played varsity boys. And then it just got bigger from that point. It was to the point where I was doing morning announcements and the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment of silent reflection. And then when I got out of school, they were asking me to come back to do high school football games as I was going to school. And then I took a hiatus from that and got back into it about 15 years ago, where I was coming back and doing football and basketball and sprinkling a little baseball every now and again. But then I transitioned from doing PA to doing the radio version for them. So I'm doing play-by-play for them during the high school seasons now, and doing public address announcing anywhere I can get a chance to do it with. You know, I've been able to do some for us here at Rome, of course, for 2 years, and then I've got Clark Atlanta football that I've been able to do some for. Got a chance to do some Georgia Tech softball and baseball this year too. So it's opening up windows slowly but surely. So it's like a lot of times I use this analogy. Sometimes the best meals are ones that show up in the slow cooker. Mm-hmm. You know, when you get there, it may take 10 hours to done, but when you get it out, boy, it tastes really, really good, man. So I don't tend to rush the process. They want you to have professionalism and professional experience. So you got to take baby steps. And I'm a firm believer of the right door will open at the right time. You know how you just said things, you weren't looking to do this. It just kind of right time, right moment, and it just all came together. I believe a lot of that is happening for me, man, as the days and the months go by of me being here at Advent Health Stadium.
And it seems like that. So now working for the Rome Emperors, what have you learned from doing this at the professional baseball level, and kind of what you need to know, the pacing you need to have, the techniques? I'm sure it's been a learning, even with all that high school experience. This is a different
it is a different beast all the way together. When I did my first audition there at Braves Fest, the lady told me you had 45 seconds. So in my head, I'm like, I got to get through this whole sheet in 45 seconds. So I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to True Show. And everybody was like, dude, if you just slow down, you great. Well, they didn't take into consideration that the lady told me I had 45 seconds to get through this. So, and actually doing this here, I learned pacing, listening to the music, how much time I got, communicating with my audio guy to make sure we look good together, making sure that everybody can really understand you. You don't really have to scream or yell or be loud to be exciting as a PA announcer, because your voice is naturally going to project what you just speaking. Learning how to understand what goes on behind the scenes with the video team, with the cameramen. It's so many different working parts to make the production what it is. If I had gone into Atlanta, I would have probably messed things up. So it's like you on a motorcycle. Man, you see people going down the street flying 100 miles an hour. It look good to them, or if they're in their big boys and their Harleys are looking good. But if I'd have got on there, I better learn how to ride a scooter first before I try to upgrade and get on a big Harley, you know, and this has been the scooter for me. And I've loved it, and I've learned so much, and I've got to do a lot of different things. Got to be able to do public address announcing. I've been able to do on-field hosting and emceeing. I've been able to do video production. I've been able to do radio play-by-play. So those things I would have never got an opportunity to do either had I gone to Atlanta. So the Lord has ways of making things work when they're supposed to work, man. So I'm fortunate.
And what have been some of your favorite memories in the time that you've been doing it here?
Man, there's so many. First opening day last year, of course, big memory. So many people came out to support us. That was a huge memory. My first on-field game, when I was able to on-field host and work through that was a big memory there. Being able to actually take the time to learn the players and learn about who they are and how they're working their way to the show and developing a relationship with them. Great moment. Anytime you can have walk-off wins. One of the moments we do here when we're trailing at the bottom of the ninth inning is called rally time. And it's a point where you get everybody excited and get them pumped up and motivated. And it's amazing to be able to be in the midst of that, and you get people texting you because they got your phone number and they tell you, dude, I've got chills. I want to bust through a wall. Oh, man. So those are some great moments here, man. It's been so many. And then when they ask you to come back and they want you here, there's no feeling greater than being wanted by your employer. Anybody can get behind a microphone and talk, but to hear your general manager come up to you and tell you, Larry, look, I love the energy you bring every time you're either behind the mic or on the field, man. You just represent Rome everywhere you go, and we really appreciate that. You can't ask for anything better than that, man.
Yeah, so while the Braves job didn't work out, this seems like just about the best second option that could have ever happened, right?
Absolutely. When things don't work out that you dream about, it may not necessarily be. What I've learned is a denial is not a denial. Just because it was delayed don't mean it was a no. It just means, wait a minute, and I use food analogies. As you can see, I'm a big guy. I use food analogies for everything. If you're barbecuing meat on the grill and you take it out before it's ready and you try to feed it to somebody, they're not going to really like what you're going to give them. So they're going to throw it away and cast it away, and I don't want to be that way. I want to be just right for the right time and the right moment. Who knows? It may not necessarily be Atlanta. There's 30 Major League Baseball stadiums all across the United States. Somebody may call and say, hey, Larry, we want to get you to audition. It may be that time. Who knows? I just want to make sure that when the opportunity presents itself, I'm ready for the next level. As I told them, I'm planning on being here as long as y'all will let me be here. But if Major League calls, of course, that'll be a different story. But yeah. I love being where I am, and that's a blessing because Atlanta is one of the few organizations, especially next year, where all their minor league affiliates will be right in the same state.
Right. Yeah.
So that's huge. So you can drive 2 hours to Columbus. You can drive an hour and 10 minutes to Gwinnett. You're already in my backyard. I live in Adairsville. I'm 15 minutes away from this stadium. Mm-hmm. So all those work together to know that you can see the next crop of your working talent going to the show right in your backyard. That's huge.
Yeah. Did you grow up in this area as well?
Born and raised in Adairsville.
Yeah. Adairsville?
Adairsville, yep. And if you're there, you live out the front of the A, you just call it Adairsville. It's country.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's a great story. I mean, just an unlikely evolution and some chapters yet to be written. So
yeah,
looking forward to seeing where it goes from here.
It has. It was crazy because last year, because of the Braves thing, I got involved to be in a group for a guy who owns a product called Ballpark DJ. There were 7. I'm the 8th voice now on that team, and I get some. Oh man, to be able to voice with people like Ryan Cameron, who was the voice of the Hawks, but now the voice of the Falcons. Greg Khalil, the voice of the Tampa Bay Rays. Marisol Castro, voice of the New York Mets. I'm pretty sure you've heard her a time or two. Michael Araujo, the voice of the Angels. To be in that selective group of company of those people shows me that there's somebody that thinks I'm good enough to do certain things, and being able to have 6, 7, 8-year-old kids who want to hear me announce them as they walk up with their walk-up music, man. That's a pat on the back too. So things are evolving the way that they're supposed to, and I don't have any intention of rushing the process. I'm just going to take it one day at a time and enjoy everything as the way it happens.
That's all you can do.
And that is all you can do.
Well, that was Ben speaking with Rome Emperor's PA announcer, Larry Gardner. I always like it when we get people who talk for a living on the show and we get to share their voices. They are the voice of the ballpark in many ways, beyond just fans and people who are hooting and hollering and saying signature catchphrases. But if you've never been to Rome, you haven't heard Larry's voice yet. So if you do make it there, that's a little preview of what you can hear across the ballpark. All right. Well, now pivoting to something that happened last week as well, which was the end of the first half of the minor league season, if you can believe it.
Time flies.
I know it's really amazing. Like, it feels like 2 weeks ago I was in Florida covering spring training, bopping all around the Sunshine State, and we were talking about spring breakouts and where guys were going to be assigned, and now we're on the downslope of the 2024 season. It's absolutely insane. But many of you will know that because the first half has ended, that's not just like a guidepost that we have. It's actually means something in minor league baseball because we have a series of first half champions in all of the leagues. So let me just run through those real quick. If you haven't heard this yet, if you have, I mean, hopefully you're celebrating a first half championship for a team that's nearby you or your favorite affiliate. But you can follow all of this postseason coverage because this is now looking toward the postseason coming up in a few months at milb.com/events/playoffs. As teams clinch, they'll appear here and you'll get more information about playoff series, championship series, all that fun stuff in the weeks and months to come. But running through the first half champions real quick. In the Pacific Coast League, we have the Sugarland Space Cowboys of the Astros system. From the Royal system, we have the Omaha Storm Chasers, first half champs in the International League. Those are league wide. Those are not like individual divisions. That is for the entire league. In Double A, in the Eastern League, this is division. So we have Northeast Division, it's the Hartford Yard Goats. Southwest Division, it's the Erie Seawolves. In the Southern League, it's the North Division. It's the Birmingham Barons, White Sox affiliate. And in the South Division, it's the Montgomery Biscuits of the Tampa Bay Rays. Those are the two teams that played at the Rickwood Field game on the minor league side. So that's interesting. We could see them maybe paired up down the line in the championship series of the Southern League. And the Texas League, the North Division, it's the Springfield Cardinals, obviously a Cardinals affiliate. And on the South Division, it's the Frisco Rough Riders of the Rangers. And then at High A, we have the Midwest League. The East Division is the Lake County Captains of the Guardians, and the West Division is the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers of the Brewers. South Atlantic League, North Division, Greensboro Grasshoppers. South Division is the Rome Emperors of the Braves. As we mentioned, Ben was there.
Yeah.
They even said, like, you might be here for a clinch.
There was a clinching potential, the game I went to last week, but they had to win and Bowling Green had to lose. Both teams won that night, so it got delayed just one more day. Arkansas Travelers had a chance to clinch too, but they ultimately lost out to Springfield Cardinals in the Texas League there. And you mentioned Omaha. I believe they have 50 wins in the first half. I mean, not too many teams get to 50, 50 wins in the first half of a minor league season. Anyway, not to interrupt.
No, totally fine. Rounding out the high A level, the Northwest League just has one first half champion. That is the Spokane Indians of the Rockies system. And then finally, the single A level California League North Division, the Modesto Nuts of the Mariners, which was an absolute loss in the first half.
Juggernauts, as it were. The game that I saw them, they came back from an 11-3 deficit and won. And yes, that's extreme, but I think that speaks writ large to the kind of team they are. They are relentless.
They had one of the deepest lineups in minor league baseball completely, with Colt Emerson, Lazaro Montez, Johnny Farmello is down for the rest of the year, and even Colt Emerson is currently injured as well. But man, that lineup was as deep. And we were talking to some people from the Cal League who were like, you got scared about facing Modesto because no league was ever safe. South Division is the Lake Elsinore Storm of the San Diego Padres. Big name there is Leo Dallas DeVries, who was just signed in January. Now he's already debuting. He hit his first career homer the other day, and his manager was saying, if you actually watch this team, you know he's the most talented player on the field. So he could have an even bigger second half as he continues to get comfortable in that California League South Division in the second half. In the Carolina League North Division, it's the Carolina Mudcats, the Milwaukee Brewers, and in the South Division, it's the Kannapolis Cannonballers of the White Sox. And then finally, in the Florida State League, it's the Palm Beach Cardinals, obviously another Cardinals affiliate. And in the West Division, the Clearwater Threshers of the Phillies. So those are your first half champs. Ben, as you kind of look back, I should say, at this first half, how do you kind of define it? What do you, at least from off the field stuff, as certain promos have gotten going, as certain redesigns have really hit the ground, what was the defining feature of the first half for you?
Well, it flew right by as it always does. That's the number one thing. Sam and I were talking before we hit record on this and talking about how the second half of the season is generally a little more intense, just with the height of the summer, with the draft for Sam and all that kind of stuff. It's weird. April, you kind of feel like, hey, game's going on and it counts, but it just doesn't feel as alive, at least from a fan perspective, because it's still cold, school's still in session, and so you really feel teams operationally starting to come into their own in May and really get going June, July, and August. Those are the money-making months for sure. And I really, especially on this last trip, just was just thinking how normal everything felt. That was basically the case last year as well, but it's just nice after some very strange years with the pandemic and the reorganization of the industry to just feel like it's a full cylinder kind of feeling to be able to see, Rome play as the Emperors, the Northwest Arkansas Naturals with their new logos. Um, that's all been good. It hasn't been too much in the way of like in-game stuff that is like really seems new. Inning breaks are shorter than ever, so it can be tough to do as much on-field stuff as teams used to do, which can be a little frustrating from my perspective at times. But on the whole, things feel like really vibrant right now and chugging along, and it's just great seeing new looks in action and getting ready for next season when we'll have a slate of new ballparks for the first time in several years as well.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be a huge thing. I think that we're going to talk about all off season. For me, kind of it's a little bit of a bummer, and I totally understand that. But in terms of like what was the defining feature of the first half for me, it was injuries. I mean, it's a little weird to say that. I understand, but like you look at our top 10 overall prospects right now at MLB Pipeline, Jackson Holiday just got back off the IL from right elbow inflammation. Junior Caminero, who's number 2 after Paul Skeens graduated, is currently down with a left quad strain. Jordan Lawler was just coming back from his own injury with a thumb issue, and now he's got a left hamstring strain himself. Jackson Jobe is currently rehabbing, on and on and on. Cade Horton not in the top 10, but has a right lat strain. I mean, injuries have really piled up among top prospects this season, which is a little bit of a bummer. It holds down some guys. James Wood was down for a while with a hamstring strain. He's currently back. If I had somebody who might be like the MVP of the first half, he would certainly be in that conversation, given how well he's taken to AAA Rochester. And I bet if he wasn't injured, we'd be talking about him in the majors right now with the Nationals, who are trying to stay competitive in the National League wild card race. And I think he could be a big boon to that offense at some point. But right now he's got to establish health. And same thing with Jackson Holiday, somebody who struggled during his time in the majors and was trying to push his way back, and then undergoes right elbow inflammation that halts that progress back at AAA Norfolk. So we'll see what happens in the second half. Hopefully it's more health. I think that's the big thing I'll be looking for in the second half is guys just getting healthy and playing again, and allowing themselves to take off in ways that, we expected them to do in the first half, like a James Wood. I hope Junior Caminero is healthier in the second half and we're watching him hit bombs again. Somebody like Davison De Los Santos is right there with James Wood for MVP discussion of the first half. I mean, he continues to kill it at AA Amarillo and AAA Reno, and I would like to see more guys do that here in the weeks and months to come. So now we will pivot to our second interview segment of the week. We're going to go back to Birmingham. I know we talked a lot about the Rickwood game last week, but we did a lot of interviews, myself and Kelsie Heneghan, who was alongside me for the road trip. Kelsie was capturing a lot of social media content, but we did a lot of interviews along the way as well. And I know last year, some of you might remember that when Ben went to Birmingham, he went to the Negro Southern League Museum, and we included an interview from that stop. We're going to include another one now. There are new listeners every year. This interview with director Anthony C. Williams, who is a different director from when Ben was there. So it is a different voice that you'll be hearing here if you did listen last year. But a lot of the focus is on what the effect of the Rickwood game is, and also just the general interest in Negro League history, which is not just a result of the Rickwood games, but also, the inclusion of Negro League players in MLB The Show video game, how popular the museum in Kansas City is getting, and whether Birmingham can reach that level of fame, or how they kind of all work together as a group in telling those stories that for many years were like kind of interesting factoids, but now there's a real hunger for this stuff. So here's myself and Kelsie Heneghan talking to Anthony C. Williams, the director of the Negro Southern League Museum. All right. Well, first off, just kind of take us through the mission of this place and what you guys hope visitors take away from a visit.
Well, the Negro Southern League Museum is here to preserve and tell the story and the history of black baseball. And we aim to tell that story through the eyes of Birmingham, Alabama. Not excluding any other area, but we focus on Birmingham's experience and try to tell the Negro League story through Birmingham's eyes.
Yeah, and how much history, like there's just so much history in Birmingham alone, not just the Black Barons, but going back decades, even centuries.
Yeah.
You know, how much does it make it easier to tell that story here specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy when you ride by the factories and the steel plants where a lot of this started. One of our focuses at the museum is on the industrial leagues, and you'll see a lot of that told at the beginning of the museum about how the industrial era kind of fed into the Negro Leagues and kind of created a lot of the stars and a lot of the players who became so well known later. And they got their start playing with those grown men who were in the industrial leagues, and they played for different steel industries and other industries that were around the steel industry.
Yeah, and kind of pivoting off of that, what do you feel like when visitors come here, they're most surprised by? Because they've heard of Satchel Paige, they've heard of the pitches, the stuff like that.
There's a lot of like surprises here. I think a lot of people are surprised to hear about players playing over seas in the Caribbean and South America, Japan. You know, there's a saying in the Negro Leagues, the sun was always shining somewhere, and where the sun was shining, there's baseball being played. And so in the winter, you know, these guys would take off, whether they went to California or Mexico or Puerto Rico, Venezuela, and they would play ball all around the country. Another thing I think is surprising is the women in the Negro Leagues exhibit. A lot of people are surprised to know that people like Mamie Peanut Johnson, Tony Stone, you know, these are women who were like fabled because they participated in an all-male league. You know, they weren't allowed to play in the white women's leagues, and so, you know, they found a place playing with the men in the Negro Leagues. And so I think that's a very big surprise for a lot of people.
Yeah. Have you seen the appetite for that type of level of education grow? I mean, you're talking about like Tony Stone, she's in the video game now.
Yeah.
These are becoming more and more household names decades after they play.
Yes, I mean, like you mentioned, the video games with the MLB The Show, telling the story, the museum in Kansas City. There's several other smaller museums throughout the country. It's just a great time to start looking back and try to reclaim some of this history and forge a new path, I think, because, you know, we can't really explain, you know, why there is a Negro League and a regular league. You know, how do we tell that story to our kids? But it's the truth. And so I think now it's the time to look back and try to make sense of it and to recognize these players who may have gotten kind of left out and to really tell their stories. And it's important, I think, for the new generation to know, for, you know, people of all races, all colors, to be able to hear both sides of the story.
Yeah, as you guys continue to tell that story, how do you view the Negro Southern League Museum's place in that? You're talking about like the museum in Kansas City, how big that's grown over the last few years.
Yes.
You guys have a massive collection here.
Yes.
Staking yourself out in the South. How do you see things moving forward?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm here, my pursuit will be to get this information to as many youth as possible, to invite youth organizations, schools, tours, whatever it may be, youth baseball organizations especially, to be able to know these stories. And I think once people learn just how important baseball was to this region and how rich the history is, I think the youth will have a different sort of, you know, just idea of their area, of this area, of how important and how strong the culture of baseball was in this area. And I think they'll walk with their head a little bit higher, just knowing that, you know, there's such a rich history here.
Yeah, and how much does Rickwood Field help tell that story? Because it's an existing structure. It's not a museum. It's like it's a living museum in some way.
It's important, you know, because a lot of times old places are torn down and, you know, they don't survive. But for whatever reason, the history of Rickwood was preserved, and I think it's so important that it's still there, and now it's being kind of updated in a way that it can be useful again. And so hopefully that'll give it another 100 years. And the history of Rickwood, you know, it dates back to the industrial era. The man himself, Rick Woodward, was in a steel family. And so it tells a story not only of baseball, but of the strong culture of people in this area who were, you know, just strong people.
Yeah, and you guys are having a lot of visitors this week because of the Rickwood Field games. As these folks come here from all over the country, what do you hope they take away from here and bring back to their areas?
I hope they get some of this, you know, Magic City charm. You know, we have some of the greatest people, some of the nicest people. But I want them to also know that, you know, when you see a person like Willie Mays, who was a three-sport athlete, Bo Jackson, from maybe 10 minutes away from Willie Mays, was a three-sport athlete. There's a very rich culture of athletics in Alabama, period. And that continues, and not just athletes, but people who were good people, just genuinely. People who know how to give back, and who really were just upstanding citizens. And so I hope that people, when they come to this area, they get some of that.
Yeah, they keep coming back. Like,
Yeah.
Do you have repeat visitors? People like circling back around?
Certainly. I think walking through the museum is like reading a book. And so you know how it is with a good book, you have to go back in it and see what you may have missed. And so, we have the avid baseball fan, of course, that wants to come back and look, but we also have the historian, the person that loves history. They want to come back and take a second look. So, I believe the museum is invaluable as far as just being able to tell those stories and offer a place to be able to come and learn about this rich history that we have here.
And then there's a lot of really cool artifacts and exhibits here. What is one of your favorites?
I love the Satchel Paige exhibit, of course. Learning that Satchel Paige is another Alabamian, born in Mobile, same place Hank Aaron was born. It just kind of feeds into the story. He played for so many teams. He was also a businessman. He played with the Barons for a minute. And so it just, shows how all of these paths crossed, and how all of the people from this area were just so talented. And so I love the Satchel Paige exhibit. Of course, I love seeing the old Barons photos. Those guys, they look just like, the people that you see every day, and when you go in Fairfield or Bessemer or Inslee or the different sides of town. And I think that's really kind of, to think about those, what they may have seen, what they may have gone through. I think that's really, I like to just stare at their photos, just for some time, and just try to think about what life may have been like to, be on the road and to play baseball in that era.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you another thrilling edition of Ghosts of the Miners. Now, here's your correspondent and host, Joshua Jackson.
Welcome back to Ghosts of the Miners, in which all of you out there in Radio Land must identify the legitimate historical ball club or player hiding amidst the fraudulent pair. One once entertained fans in the box and at the dish. The others were never anywhere at all. In the last segment, I asked you which of the following minor league baseball players did at one time exist. A. Lane House. B. Dwayne Domesticity. C. Wayne Reside. The lights are on and you're at home if you picked C. Wayne Reside, around whom baseballs were always on the move. Reside made his living predominantly as a hitter, but also worked occasionally as a pitcher during the first couple seasons of a minor league career that lasted from 1945 through the 1948 campaign. The Reside residence was full of ball players. One of four brothers, Wayne was preceded in the pros by his elder sibling Neil, who stood tall when he made his debut with the Ohio State League's Lima Redbirds of 1944. But Wayne waned Lima's memories of Neil by signing with the club, now just the Lima Reds, the very next year, when his brother was off to the Piedmont League for the second of his three-season career. Out of the gate, Wayne Reside looked right at home with Lima. In that debut campaign of 1945, even after an injury sidelined him for 3 weeks in the first half of the season, Reside's place was on the All-Star team. The Lima News' Joe Halberston noted upon the event of Reside's selection, Reside, according to officials who should know, is the most powerful hitter in the league. Primarily a second baseman, he did continue to take the hill in Ohio State League games, but may have thrown mostly meatballs, or maybe bean balls, for Lima. He's listed as having a 4.65 ERA over 25 starts that first season. In 46, Reside had a homecoming with the Lima Nine, now christened the Terriers. On the 1st of August, however, news dropped that Reside was to be uprooted. He'd been sold to the National League's New York system. Still, re-siding with the same circuit's Springfield Giants did not unsettle Reside. He finished with a loop-best 21 dingers and 118 RBIs. Unfortunately, Reside never quite lived up to the pop he showed that season. Following a relocation to the Tri-State League's Asheville Taurus on the Brooklyn farm for 47, he was credited with a mere 3 home runs in 106 games. Perhaps the jump from a Class D circuit up to Class B was the cause of that F in the power department, and Reside never really settled in with the Danville Leafs, Meridian Pips, or Columbia Reds, playing at Classes A, B, and C in 1948. And that's how Wayne Reside left ball and headed home. Now, on to the question for next time. Which of these teams was full of sickos in the minors of yesteryear? A, the Dallas Disease Bugs. B, the Memphis Fever Germs. C, the Vancouver Virus Hounds. Want to know the answer? Consult your physician. Or tune into the next Ghost of the Miners. But for now, you'll have to excuse me. My producer Ben Hale just mistook me for the milkman, and I've got to bottle up my resentment.
Thanks to Josh Jackson for another edition of Ghost of the Miners. We asked Josh to do a version of that in Italian, as well as Latin and Pig Latin, with Tyler overseas to maybe make Tyler a little bit more comfortable. We're going to put that on our Patreon. That doesn't exist, but may someday. So if you want to pay for the Italian edition of Ghost of the Miners, get at Josh and he will send you his Venmo and we will get that Patreon going. So yeah, thanks to Josh. And now it's the return of Guess the Guys.
Guess the guy.
Okay, guess the guy.
That guy.
What's that guy? But it's just me and Ben. So there's one fewer guesser than we normally have. So we'll see how this is going to go. There's a lot of pressure on both of our shoulders because we're going to do two. I'm going to ask you one. You're going to ask me one. So we'll see how this goes. But I will start here with my guy who was drafted in the 15th round of the 1999 draft by the Padres out of St. Paul's Episcopal School in Mobile, Alabama. This is part of the reason why I'm bringing him up. Mobile guy. Started his career in 1999 as an 18-year-old in the Arizona League with the Padres and then moved up after 13 games to the Idaho Falls Braves of the Pioneer League. Still a Padres affiliate, but they were known as the Idaho Falls Braves at the time.
Dunkers.
In 2000, he spent the entire season with the Fort Wayne Wizards, who were the single-A affiliate of the Padres at the time.
And today.
Well, they're high A now.
Yeah, high A.
But they were still
called the Tin Caps.
And they're called the Tin Caps. 2001, he moved up to high A with the Lake Elsinore Storm and then went back home to the Mobile Bay Bears. Played 5 games with them in 2001 during his age 20 season, returned to the Bay Bears in 2002, played 14 games, and then moved to the majors with the Padres and spent much of the remainder of his career in the major leagues.
All right, I think I got this one.
You think you got this one?
Jake Peavy.
Jake Peavy is correct.
Yeah.
What was the giveaway?
I have memories of covering the Bay Bears in my earlier days of this job. And I think he was already gone from the Bay Bears, but PB related giveaways and those kind of things.
That would make sense.
So when you said Mobile guy, I was thinking back to my early visits to the Bay Bears and thought, I think they did some PV like bobbleheads or had PV appearances after he retired. I couldn't remember the specifics, but yeah, so that's what caused him to jump up right out there.
There you go. I mean, that's just good work by you and good memory by you. Just to go through the rest of his career, obviously he spent a lot of time with the Padres, with the White Sox. So he made stops in Birmingham, rehab appearances in Birmingham and Charlotte. 8 years with the Padres, 5 years with the White Sox, 3 years with the Giants, and 2 with the Red Sox. He won World Series on 2 occasions. 2 occasions, yeah, once with the Red Sox and once with the Giants. He won a Cy Young Award. He was a 3-time All-Star, won 2 ERA titles. He won that Cy Young in 2007 with the Padres, going 19-6 with a 2.54 ERA. He led the majors in ERA and in strikeouts and in WHIP that year. So about as dominant a performance as you could have on the mound in 2007 for Jake Peavy. Got to spend some time with Peavy during the spring. He was on the MLB Network side, and I was doing some interviews as well with that gang. Just tons of really good stories about playing in Mobile and what it was like being a local kid who got to go to those games and pitch at home. I mean, it's a little crazy, right? Like he was, drafted as a high school guy, not exactly expected to sign at the 15th round, and they talked him into it. with a decent signing bonus, and then he just gets thrown into Arizona. And like, this is your career now, kid. And he was like, there was so much to feel around, but I think getting the opportunity to play in a home stadium and play in a place that he was a little bit comfortable certainly helped his career. Didn't go to AAA. I mean, he jumped from AA Mobile straight to San Diego and then stuck there for much of the remainder of his career. So Jake Peavy is my guy. Ben, now it is your turn. And I am not looking at your screen.
Yeah, of course not. I'll jump right in towards the end of this guy's career. Not the middle, towards the end. 2009, he pitched in 3 games for the Northwest Arkansas Naturals, who we've been talking about on this podcast.
2009?
In 2009,
Okay.
just a little rehab appearance. He also played a couple games for AAA Omaha that season, but spent the majority of that season in 2009 with Kansas City, 2010 with Kansas City, then finished up 2010 with the Braves, then 2011 with the Rays. Spent a little time rehabbing in Durham and Charlotte in 2012, but again, mostly with the Rays. Then a little stint in Indianapolis in 2013, but spent time with the Pirates that season, as well as beginning that season again with the Rays. Pitched for the Mets in 2014, and finished up his major league career with the Astros in 2014, and then a couple years in Mexico until the age of 40. I just started from the middle there because of the Northwest Arkansas Naturals connection.
I was going to say,
But now we'll go back to the beginning.
Is
here.
the beginning of his career like too big of a hint?
Yeah, Wichita, Kansas native. Drafted by the Cubs. I'm not sure which round, but made his debut in 1995 after getting drafted with the Gulf Coast League Cubs. 96, spent the entire season in the Midwest League with the Rockford Cubs, the now defunct Rockford, Illinois Cubs. 1997, Daytona High A at the time in the Florida State League. 1998, Iowa and West 10, the AA and AAA affiliates of the Cubs. 99, a little time in Iowa, and then finally, Major League debut, 1999. Pitched most of 2000 in the majors, 2001 in the majors, 2002 almost entirely in the majors. Again, all of this with the Cubs, 2003, 2004. Then Detroit, Atlanta, New York Yankees, and then to Kansas City.
Oh, man. Okay.
He is a pitcher.
Thank you. You did say pitched many times.
Oh,
so
I
that
did
was-
say pitch. I gave that away. In the
That-
minors, he was largely a starter. In the majors, he was a reliever. Again, more time with the Cubs than any other team, especially in those early years of his career, 1999 through 2004. It was like the largest chunk he spent with any one major league team. But the Cubs, the Tigers, the Braves, the Yankees, back to the Tigers, the Royals, back to the Braves, the Rays, the Pirates, the Mets, the Astros.
For some reason, Kyle Farnsworth keeps coming up in my brain, but I think that's too early for Kyle Farnsworth.
That is correct.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it is Kyle.
Holy
Farnsworth.
crap.
That is right.
Wow.
Just went with a Kansas guy who did at least spend a little time in the Royals organization and again with Northwest Arkansas Naturals. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. No wrong guesses this week.
No.
This is what happens when it's just me and Ben on the show. We get 0 wrong guesses.
Yeah,
That's not true.
None of that muddled, chaotic Tyler energy to bring us down.
Well, that's been another episode of the show before the show. We will have Tyler on next week for all you Tyler heads out there, and we know they're
Moniacs.
There it is. See, I send it up, you slam it down. Then, but yeah, Tyler will be back next week. We do miss him. He will be editing this show, so hi Tyler. We do miss you. But thanks to everybody who appeared on the show this week. Thanks to Josh Jackson for Ghosts of the Miners. I'm Sam Dykstra. He's Ben Hill. We'll catch you next week.